The Russian-installed governor of the occupied Luhansk region has said that Russian troops are now in full control of the entire region. Apart from that, Ukraine, however, has not independently confirmed this, and Kiev contests this claim. What is happening on the battlefield and how is the war looking like between Ukraine and Russia? To talk more on this, we're now being joined by Ben Aris, founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews, and also former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Welcome to WION, Mr. Aris.
My pleasure to be here.
Now, Mr. Aris, Luhansk is the first Ukrainian region to be fully occupied by Russia. That's what Russia is claiming. Talk to us more on that, and how perhaps will this change the situation on the battlefield?
Yeah, it's a major feather in the cap for Putin. They've been trying to occupy the whole of the Donbass region and have failed. And that the stated war goal of the Kremlin is not to occupy the whole and conquer the whole of Ukraine, but it's just to take the Donbass, to take control of these 4 regions, which they annexed in September 2023. So technically, as far as the Russians are concerned, they're Russian territory. But that was the irony. They annexed the regions and they don't actually control all of them. This one is particularly important if you remember in the early stages of the war that they did occupy all of Lugansk, and then there was this spectacular summer breakthrough by the Ukrainian side that pushed the Russians back out of Lugansk, which was occupied at the time. And they've been struggling to take it back ever since. And the irony of the war is we've been fighting for more than 3 years, and Russia has taken control of 20% of the territory, but it's not made any progress, or hardly any progress. It's been moving incredibly slowly at enormous cost, 1,000 dead every day, according to the latest estimates. So to actually occupy completely Lugansk is for Putin an extremely important milestone.
Right.
Stated war goal.
Right, Mr. Aris, I also want to talk to you about how what we're seeing right now is one of the most intensive air campaign yet, with Russia launching its largest aerial assault of the war, firing nearly 537 weapons, 477 drones and 60 missiles, while on the other hand, Ukraine is still asking for more weapons and equipment from the West.
Well, that's the other significance of the Lugansk occupation, that we've been arguing, or it's been argued, that Ukraine is running out of air defense missiles in particular, because their relationships have de facto come to an end with the States. Trump hasn't sent any new weapons at all, particularly not the Patriot air defense missiles. And they're running out. And as you say, it was in March that Russia launched a massive attack in the midst of what was supposed to be ceasefire talks. They just upped the ante and hit with 1,000 drones and missiles in one day. And they've been doing that continuously. And I think this is a repeat of the tactic they used last year, which is, again, when the Americans ran out of money to support Ukraine at the start of the year, if you remember. And then we to deplete the defensive ammo, and then by March, it was all gone. The skies were open. And in the second half of the year, that Russia completely destroyed all of Ukraine's non-nuclear power infrastructure. And we're at that point again. I think that Ukraine is desperately low on air defense missiles. It's being pounded with increasingly heavy bombs. The Russians just introduced this week a new glide bomb that's rocket-powered, that's even more powerful than the existing ones. And those things have a payload of 1,000 to 3,000 kilograms of explosive. They're huge. And now the sky is more or less open again. The fall of Lugansk testifies to they're pounding the AFU, the Ukrainian armed forces, who are being pushed back. And so here we have a territorial gain, a capture of a whole region, which suggests that Ukraine is starting to lose the war. It's starting to look very bleak. And as you mentioned, Zelensky met with Trump recently at the NATO summit. He specifically asked for more Patriots, and he didn't promise to send any. And I think without those, I mean, some commentators are saying this war will be over in 6 months.
Right, and we're also learning that the Russian President Vladimir Putin's main goal is perhaps the occupation of Odessa. Is that true? What is your analysis on that? And if it is, what kind of repercussions will there be for Ukraine?
Well, again, this is a matter of speculation at the moment. It's been coming up more and more often. And indeed, as part of the barrage that Russians have been firing recently, they're increasingly targeting and hitting Odessa. Odessa, I mean, they occupy the territory between the Crimea up to Rostov and the Russian border, but Odessa's on the other side towards Moldova. And supply route-wise, that's kind of difficult to get through. You have to get through a lot of territory that's occupied by the Ukrainian Home Forces. Nevertheless, Putin sees it as a Russian city. It was actually founded by Potemkin in the 17th century. So, I mean, as far as the Russians are concerned, it is a Russian city. But economically, strategically, it's incredibly important that it's the main port. It's now exporting more grain than it did before the war. It's Ukraine's, economic connection to the rest of the world. Were to take it, then that would be a huge blow for the Ukrainian economy. And strategically, too, it would basically sort of more or less cut them off from their access to the Black Sea. They wouldn't have any big ports to access the Black Sea. And so for the Russian side, I mean, this would be a huge coup. And as I say, they're emotionally invested into it because they see it as a Russian city.
Right. My last question to Mr. Aris. Now, during Trump's campaign, he really wanted the Ukraine-Russia war to come to an end. He said, I will bring the war to an end in the next 100 days. But there have been talks, there have been negotiations, but with no immediate or imminent outcome. My last question to you is, what is perhaps stalling meaningful peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, watching the whole thing unfold with the talks that began in Riyadh in February, at the beginning, Trump's strategy was basically to come to Zelensky with most of Putin's demands. That was to give up territory, to recognize Russian sovereignty over the occupied regions, to reduce the Ukrainian military, and to promise never to join NATO. And it all came to a head in March or May in London. And the Ukrainian side basically refused. Giving up sovereignty of Ukrainian territory is a red line for Zelensky. And at that point, as far as I'm concerned, the ceasefire talks collapsed. They're now dead. And Trump is not famous for his patience. He wanted a quicker deal. He was pressuring Ukraine into accepting or conceding Putin's terms to the point where the US ambassador in Kiev quit in disgust at the White House's policy. And when he didn't get any results, I think Trump now has completely lost interest. He's been distracted by the war in the Middle East. He's not particularly interested in giving any more weapons. He's not interested at all in giving any more money. There's been no allocations of either since he took office. Apart from the polite conversation.
Right, Mr. Aris. Thank you so much for joining us here on WION World with your insights.